Sunny Bunani, hello. So that's the sound of a coffee. So I think this will be counterintuitive, but uh, nonetheless, I think it had to be said, or I had to say it. I think it's important, especially in this modern day of ours, to remind our kids that in the food chain we are the most important aspect or elements in that food chain, because I think we might have seen now today that as parents, as modern parents, 80s will attest to this, early 90s will attest to this, and anyone for that matter who has a kid right now who's in his early teen stages, or even a few years before reaching that early teens stage. You know, you're competing with a lot of things. The social engineer, social engineer. There are people with different perspective, different ideologies of the world, different ways on how they see the world and how they interact with it. So personally, I think it's very much important to just squeeze it a bit, just tighten the fuss a bit to say, look, man, you have to understand that out of the food chain, we are the most important aspect within that food chain, because personally what that does, or what that has done for us, is to teach us a sense of responsibility, being accountable, showing up, and of course not to have any sense of any entitlement or whatsoever. To know, look, to get this or to reach this state, this is so much that is demanded of you, and this is so much that is expected of you. Because trust me, these days we'll be raising kids that are full of entitlement, are full of, you know what, it will just come. I mean, reality is we live in a instant gratification age right now. Everything just happens with a snap of a finger. But behind that snap of a finger, there's so much work that has been done. There's so much doing that has been done. There's so much failures that have been done as well. Because, you know, I think again, I think my generation will attest to this. Your early 90s, mm, we understood failure, we understood being ridiculed, but we grow into now having to develop this sense of entitlement. Asizoyithola. Uzoyithola kanjani mfethu urelaxile? Uzoyithola kanjani hlele khoneni? That's what the song says. Yeah, there's a song that says that. Uzoyithola kanjani hlele khoneni? I'll try to translate it. How will you get things, or how will you get as far as you want to, if you're still sitting around the corner? Yeah. So yeah, I think we just need to tighten up the fuss, tighten up the squeeze, and to say, out of the food chain that is there, we are the most important aspect, or the most important players in that food chain, because what that does is teach our kids responsibility, accountability, as I've said, and again, it brings a sense of humility into our kids, a sense of building humility and a sense of appreciation, to know, appreciate what my parents have done and what my parents do. And I understand, there are some that grew up without parents, both of them, or single parents household, or whoever who was your guider, or was your official what carer. That person is a parent to you, or that community was of your parent to you in your upbringing. So I think that is needed in this day of age. Mm. And of course, I know we are the generation of the wise. Why must I do this, or why should I do that? And we have to acknowledge that, look, this is the generation we live in now. They, they, they are their structure on how they connect with people, it's of the essence of asking why. So not as parents, I think tightening up the bow or tightening up the fuss is we should be well enough with, oh, these kids, this is what they're now exposed to, this is what now they're pretty much affluent with, or this is the affiliation and stuff like that. So having to understand that, or having to and build that relationship of to understand where they are and where we come from on and what is needed right now, I think would do so much justice for us. Because really, personally, I think there's so much doing that needs to be done, and just a sip, and so much that our kids need, man. So much that is needed, and so much of structures that are needed, so much of the tightening up of the bow that is needed to pretty much breed a generation that will understand you can't be entitled to just having. You need to show up, you need to work, you need to be responsible, you need to have a sense of respect for what you've achieved, a sense of respect for what you would want for yourself, not just to take and be dependable all the time. Considering the fact that in marginalized society, that's the mentality that is built, that's the mentality that we most grew up to understand, which no, government will come and save us. So now having us understood Londoleo, I think is the time. It's that high time now to say, okay, as the now generation or as the now parents, we've understood that it's time now to tighten up the bow and say, look, man, you could have one and two and three. Your father can work here and here and here. Your father can have this and this and this. Your mother can be that and that and that. Your mother can have this and that and that. But still, that is not your own. You must have an amount of self-respect to understand that. To understand there's a show up. There's an element of failure. There's an element of labor that is needed to get there, to have that, to own that. Because really, if we don't do that as parents, uh, we are in for a huge one. You're in for a huge one because these kids, man, there's so much that they compete against. Let alone there's us as parents as well that we are competing against or competing with. So tightening up the bow and say, look, we stop all these nonsense things that you may have had or you might have seen, and tighten up the bow and say, look, this is what we now, or this is what you should build of your own going forward. And of course, the earlier the better. I mean, we didn't start early. We didn't get the better of the opportunities. Yes, we gotten those opportunities. I'm not being not appreciative of those opportunities, but for our kids and for the next generation that is there, I think it's very much key and very much important to just squeeze the whatever that needs to be squeezed so that they understand we sit at the highest of the chain supply, and that respect should ripple from that to everyone that they interact with, be it their counterparts, be it their friends, be it the community, be it everyone for that matter. And I understand this may this may be or may sound like those of we trying to create a utopian society. Yes, but there's so much that needs to be done, you know. And part of creating that utopian society or structure, there's so much unlearning that needs to be done in the process. So I guess this is part of that learning. This is part of that learning. So please don't forget to subscribe and do the right thing. Let's chop it up in the comment section. And I'd love to hear your views and your comments on what I've just shared right now. Um, on raising kids, the next generation, the future, and of course, cutting all this BS when it comes to entitlement. And for our kids to know there's failure, you have to go through this to understand not everything just comes like that. The fact that we've worked, the fact that we've gotten these opportunities, it doesn't mean now everything just comes like that. So how do we tighten up that bow, or how do we make our kids be aware of that and to pretty much embrace that in their lives and going forward? Because really, that's how this life thing is all about: showing up, self-respect. Part of showing up means there's labor that needs to be done. There's an element of work that needs to be done, whether 9 to 5 or not 9 to 5, entrepreneurship, not the entrepreneurship, but still there's an amount of labor that is required from each and every one of us. So yeah, let me hear in the comment section and let's just chop it up there. Peace in your one. Cheers.